All right. Well, man, this is truly an honor. Class is in session, but beyond class, I would say church
Church is in session.
is in session to be here on Cannon's class with someone that not only that I admire, that I look up to, that I see as a mentor, but I also see as a true friend and a true leader in the center of it all, in the midst. When I say warrior, is man, I've seen you fight so many different fights, but with the sword of love. A theologian, a community activist, leader, and phenomenal orator, but someone that I look to when I need advice. Father Michael Pfleger, as we call him, Father Mike.
Yes, sir.
Such a pleasure
Good
to
see
join
you,
me here.
man.
And
So much love for you, bro.
man, and likewise, and I'll get into how you and I originally met, but
Right.
when I fell in love with your passion for the community, because we are at the Saint Sabina Cathedral that is on 78th in Racine.
Yes, sir.
Now, if anyone knows those two streets, or just
Right.
either one of those streets in the south side of Chicago, right here, man, it's so much devastation, it's so
Yeah.
much pain, it's so much hurt going on here, and you are truly an oasis of hope, an oasis of love in the center of what's going on, and a lot of people, and every time you call, I try to make sure I show up. And
Yes, sir.
And
You always have.
and a lot of people say, when we talk about whether it's the Black Lives Matter movement or anything that goes on within the black community, well, what about Chicago?
Yeah. Yeah.
What are you
exactly.
doing for Chicago? What about black on black crime? And you, my brother, are doing for Chicago. And everything that I've done in this city, I've turned to you. I've looked to your guidance, to whether I'm speaking or protesting, or even really food giveaways, speaking to the youth, taking the guns back. All of those
Right.
things that we have actually attempted to do. You've been doing from day one, man, and continue to be a strong pillar. And before we get into all the things that we want to have discussions and discourse about, I just have to say thank you. As someone, there's no race, creed, color, cut, class. You love people. And you show it daily, and you show that you're in the fight for not only our community, but our collective communities in general. And you're a rarity. They don't have those anymore.
Well, I thank you, man. I have so much love for you and so much respect for you. Your courage, your truth. You always, from the first time I've met you, I've seen two things that were consistent: your truth and your love. And you don't find that in people nowadays. You find a lot of fronts. You find a lot of, what people put on and what people want to show you.
Right.
But you're consistent.
Yeah.
You're consistent in whether it's a conversation one-on-one, or you're up speaking to somebody, or when you came down and talked to a group of our brothers in the hall who are from the street. And you're consistent in your truth and your love, and your always willingness to be a prophetic voice in a time when prophetic voices seem to have gotten laryngitis.
That's
And
powerful.
you've continued, and you've been true to you, in an industry that you don't find a whole lot of that.
Right.
I always laugh about when Muhammad Ali died, and I knew Muhammad Ali, and we had conversation about how athletes weren't willing to do and go through what he went through, and everybody, he's my hero, but where were you like him?
Yeah. Ooh.
And the same thing with you. You've been consistent. People say that they love you, but they lack the courage, they lack the boldness, they lack the truth, and they lack the love that you have. So I just thank you for who you are, and you've always been a hero of mine, and
Oh man,
continue
well,
to be a hero of
you're
mine.
definitely my hero, and as someone who is hoping and walking and studying in the world of of theology and to want to be a theologian like yourself. Man, I commend that process. I commend, and we were speaking earlier about just even, your faith to Catholicism,
Hmm.
even in the midst of a black community,
Right.
to the idea of like a white Catholic priest, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's leading the
Hmm.
charge. But when we'll dig in deeper
Yeah. Yeah.
into this, into Roman Catholicism and
Right.
Constantine and all of those things, just to really talk.
Hmm.
When we discuss religion, but taking the religion out of it, man. I
Yeah.
like your origin story. I mean, you were telling me even, of being someone who admired Dr. King. We both share
Yeah.
that passion
Yeah.
of just love and admiration for Dr. King. And I would love for you to share that story of like how you seen Dr. King, because as we all know, Dr. King came here in
60s. Well, so he came several times, but in '66 when he
he
did the
moved
march,
here, right?
yeah, and he moved here on the west side of
Yeah,
Chicago.
yeah,
Um, and said when he moved here, he saw more hate in the north than he
yeah.
had ever seen in the south.
Yeah, and you were there. You were present as a teenager, and that you said that moment changed your life when you saw King marching. Could you
Yeah,
share
I'd
that?
heard for weeks, the TV and the papers that this guy Martin Luther King Jr. was coming to Chicago on an open housing march. And in my neighborhood, I grew up in a white, middle-class, inbred community, and all I heard was King called names and racial names and just all sorts of negative names. And I remember asking my mom one day, I said, what do you think of this King guy? And all she said is, he's a good man. And she kept on walking.
Hmm.
And I trusted my mother's integrity and character discernment. So when he had heard he was coming to Marquette Park, I knew if I asked, my mother would never let me to go over there because there was all this anti-King demonstrations going to go on. So myself and two of my friends, we rode our bikes over there. And the first thing, Nick, that was interesting, we rode down 71st Street, and passing what I never knew was there was a Nazi headquarters at 71st and Tallman.
Oh,
And I saw the swastika on this building. I saw ends go home and all this kind of stuff written on the building. And I thought, wow, this is like 10 minutes from my house. Years later, when I asked my mom, my dad, I said, well, how come you never told me about that? I said, we never wanted you or your sister to see it, so they would never drive down that street.
wow.
So I see this. Then I go into the park. One of my friends he takes care of the bikes. Another friend of myself, we decided we're going to walk over and try to see King. And never had seen hate like this. I never saw such racism, just out bold, crazy.
Yeah, I seen the videos of that where
Oh
they're
my
just like
God,
yelling
throwing
at him.
stuff,
Yeah.
yelling at him, turning over cars started. I watched a car start on fire, all this kind of crazy stuff. But what was interesting to me, I saw some people there who lived in my neighborhood, who went to my church, who were older brothers or a father of some of my friends, and I had never seen this part of them.
Wow.
So I saw this first, and now I go over and I see King when he come through, and I didn't even know he had already been hit by a rock when he first came into the park at 67th and Kedzie.
Wow.
But now I see him, and it was to me the most powerful witness of nonviolence I'd ever seen in my life, because there's all this hate, and namely, he did not react to any of it. He's consistent, saying we're brothers and sisters. We have to
Wow.
learn to live together, and he's walking through this. And I rode my bike home that day with my friends, and I said to myself, I got to know this guy. Either he's crazy or he has some kind of power. And I
Right.
got to find this power that he had. And I became obsessed with him. I started to read everything he'd written up until 1966.
Wow.
And I said, I want to follow this guy. It's really interesting. Although I'm a priest, I'm a pastor in a church, King, who was a pastor, but it was the person King who most exemplified to me what the scriptures that I knew about of the beginnings of the church and the Acts of the Apostles. And it was a guy named Fred Hampton and the Panthers in the West Side.
Right here from Chicago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who taught me about community organizing.
Mm.
When I moved to the West Side when I was in college and in graduate school, I realized that there was no church and no organization in that neighborhood that was doing more for the community than the Panthers.
Mm.
And that's what drew me to them. I said, man, and then when they needed a place to meet, I got the church I was staying at to let them meet there.
Whoa, so you got with Fred Hampton in the Panthers?
Yeah, and Mark Clark
So you knew Fred Hampton?
I knew Fred. And,
Wow. So I mean, he was taken away from us when he was only 21.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you guys are probably young guys.
And I say to this day, I've never yet met anybody with the genius of community organizing than Fred Hampton.
Wow, at 21.
Yeah, just amazing. His knowledge, he was a genius, and his ability to capture people and bring them into the cause. You know, the whole breakfast program, the tutoring program, all that he was doing there. So I started going to picking up bread for the breakfast program.
Wow.
And I was in the seminary at the time, so I put my little collar on. They thought I was picking it up for the Catholic Church down the street. And I would go get the bread and bring it over to the Panther headquarters.
Wow.
But I saw what they were doing. You know, and I've always been a person. It's not what you say either in your religious dogma or in your religious settings, but it's what you do that makes you who you are. And so I saw what King did, and I saw what Fred Hampton did. I saw what Malcolm did, and that's what drew me, because it's about action.
Yeah, it's so funny that you say that, because I always say, like, obviously the current position that I'm in, I was like, words got me here, but actions are going to get me out.
Absolutely.
Words are powerful, but
Absolute
actions are even
action.
more powerful.
Yeah.
So
Much
you're
more
going to
powerful.
see my heart through my actions.
Yeah.
And I mean, and it's so many things. It amazes me that we're talking from, you know, your influence from Dr. King early on, and how you became close with the family from that, you know, from that moment, to speaking about Fred Hampton, to even being the people who have come and spoken in this church, from presidents to Winnie Mandela to, I mean, you walk through these halls and
It's the only Catholic church Daddy King ever spoke at.
Wow.
Rosa Parks spoke here. Mandela's daughter spoke here.
Yeah.
Of course, Maya Angelou was here every year. Harry Belafonte came every year till he couldn't travel anymore. Harry Till, to this day, is one of my
and
best,
that's a mentor of mine too.
Yeah.
Have had the opportunity to do this with him many times, as well as even work with him in film. But I say all of that. I mean, your greatness has been partnered with so many others' greatness, and in the world that what we're dealing with today, strong voices are important. And you know, you and I have had similar experiences when, you know, being attached or associated with Minister Farrakhan, who is truly a strong voice in the Black community. But you guys have an amazing relationship.
Yeah.
And which is what people wouldn't even know. A Catholic priest.
A white Catholic priest.
White Catholic priest and Minister Farrakhan. How long have you known him?
For 30 years.
Wow.
You know, it's funny. I remember when he was first speaking out of the Final Call building down the street, when he was first starting out, to rebuild the nation. And they had speakers out in the street, and I would go down 79th Street and stand about Black Way and listen to his voice and his words standing out in the street. And I was at a dinner at his house. That's how we really first started to become friends. There was about 20 pastors there that were invited over to do what is, I think, always so important, to sit down and listen and have conversation and ask questions and talk and get to know. So we sat down there, and as the dinner was ending, went on for a couple hours, and I said, you know, I want you to come to my church and speak. And the minister, in his gentleness, this is back in 87 maybe, 86, 87. And he smiled and he says, thank you, my brother. We'll talk about it. And so when people are leaving, different people, and he said, hold off a minute. He told me to wait. So as everybody left, and then I was the last one leaving. And I said, he said, I want you to think about that and pray about that. Now, while people are saying goodbye to him, there are other people coming up to me, other pastors, black pastors, saying to me, it's like, you don't want him to come to your church. It's going to hurt you. It's going to destroy you. Your people are going to turn against you. You don't want this Muslim leader coming to you. He's a great guy, and we're glad we're here, but no. So when I went up to him at the end, I said, I want you to come. He said, well, you think about it and pray about it, and you get back to me. And he gave me a Quran and wrote his name and phone number in it and said, here, call me after you think about it. I called him about 3 days later. He said, so when's the date? And he came here. And it's funny, his first time he ever spoke in this church, his sermon was titled, Jesus Christ, my Lord and my Savior. Praising Jesus, my Lord and my Savior.
Mm.
And it was amazing. And that week before, the cardinal at that time told me, you had to cancel it. And I said, I won't.
Mm.
I know the person, Louis Farrakhan, and I love the man, Louis Farrakhan. This relationship, he's somebody who has been a confidant and somebody who's been a brother, who's been a supporter, and freed us to have the conversation, always be honest with each other. And I just value people who are not, who are free enough and self-confident enough to be able to have real, true conversations.
Right. And when you speak of real, true conversations, what we're having right now, and I feel like there's so much to unpack, but even just in what you just said, that about, Minister Farrakhan, is that people tend to want to throw away or ostracize, or even in this day and time of cancel culture. You've been canceled many times.
Mm-hmm.
I've been canceled many times. But to be able to say truly with love and compassion that we speak of, that we have no malice, we have no intentions, but when people can point to maybe more hurtful and malicious things, Dr. John Henry Clark said sometimes we could talk about the right things in the wrong way.
Yeah, right.
And I feel like, there's many times, like I said, I've received several documents on how the minister's rhetoric is hurtful, specifically to the Jewish community. And that's, I found myself, stepping on a lot of landmines and tropes that sent people in the wrong direction. And I atoned for it. I apologize, because never my intentions to hurt people. But when you see someone who's like your friend, myself in a situation, or, you said some things because you're a passionate orator and stuff, and you get up here in front of the congregation and might say something that others could be hurt by. The minister has said things that communities felt hurt by. I've said things that have hurt individuals. You said things as an orator, as a speaker, as a theologian of love. Your actions are clearly love. You love your community. If someone were to Google you, all the things that you've done in the city of Chicago are saint-like.
I don't know about that, but I try to do it with love.
But I mean, in that way, to where it's just like such love. But someone can take your words.
Oh, yeah.
And paint a picture of your words as hurtful, as hateful. So it doesn't matter if Minister Farrakhan, has brought together 1 million black men that wants to be the largest peace gathering in the history of the world.
Right.
He may have said this, or it doesn't matter what you do, in the city of Chicago. You said this against this politician or that politician.
Right.
My words to, even, the white community, when I'm talking about history and the Iceman inheritance and all those things, it's like, oh, well, you must hate people, or you're a racist.
Right.
How does one balance that as someone who wants to speak truth to power and be passionate with their convictions, still allow the love and the actions to flow through, but to stand by your words, or the people who are saying words? And, we've had off conversations about somebody might say something.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I don't agree with what they say, but I agree with their heart and their actions.
I think one of the dangers of the day we live in, Nick, is that I think two things happen. First of all, we're a YouTube headline society. So you can get up and speak for an hour, and they're going to find a line in there because they're looking for what's the edgy thing they can take.
Right.
And that becomes the headline. And now all of a sudden, for the people who never read the talk or listened to the talk, that's what you said. That was your whole talk about that.
Clickbait.
Yeah, we're that kind of a shallow society.
Right.
I think the other thing of it is all of us. I mean, I don't know of anybody, including this mentor that we both love, Dr. King, who have said things, and in our passion and in our emotion and in our are caring so much about the issue we're talking about, have said it in ways that we wish we had not said it.
Right.
You know, I mean, I think that's a human reality that
Right.
we all go through. So it's a combination of those two that then provide a shallow society to determine how they're going to define people.
Right.
And we lack the substance, we lack the willingness to say, okay, you know, it was Dr. King's words that wanted me, both those powerful words about the racism and the inequality of poverty in this country. It was all of that, plus his constant nonviolence and love of people, love that we're brothers and sisters.
Right.
It was a combination of those powerful words that said, I need to find out more about him. It made me go read and study him.
Right.
But we're not in a society now that we want to take the time or listen or find out, okay, I heard Nick Cannon said this. Let me go find out. Let me listen to the talk. And unfortunately, we're this, 30-second attention society. We're this lack of substance society, and we jump on stuff. And media and society often decides two things about us. Either they're going to say, okay, we're going to ignore Nick Cannon or Mike Pfleger completely,
Right.
so that nobody hears what they're saying, or we're going to define how people hear them. And that's dangerous. That's dangerous. And we have to become a society. And that's not just in profile people in the media. That happens in conversations of friends, in a school, in a church. I heard Nick did this. I heard Nick said this.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden the gossip. And now, I never heard you say it.
Right.
I never saw you. I never talked to you. I never asked you. But now, and this is my frame of you now because somebody told me you said this or did this. We live in that kind of a society where we don't want to say, no, I want to know for myself. Let me give you one last thing, and now shut up.
No, we're here to hear your wisdom.
I went to give a talk one time at a place, and this guy came up to me before the talk, and he said, I can't stand you. I hate everything you stand for and the things that you say. I said, sir, have we ever met? No. Have you ever heard me talk or things I've said before? He said, no, but I hate what you're about. And I said, well, thank you for being here tonight, because at least tonight, if you hate me, you'll know why you hate me. But maybe the things you think are said now are not what you thought.
Right.
Because what somebody told you about me.
Right.
So at least I appreciate you coming to hear me.
Right.
And we don't take time
To listen.
to listen and have conversation, and to be free enough to be honest with the conversation.
Right.
So if you send me, Pfleger, hey, you said this, and I just really have a problem with this, then I don't become defensive. That I can say, oh, well, let's talk about that. Here's why I said it. Wow, maybe I said it this way. It could be interpreted this way. We don't want to take the time for substance.
Right. And you bring up a great point, because when we talk about cancel culture, and I always say it shouldn't be cancel culture. It should be counsel culture. And I look to you as a counselor. Many times in private conversations and even just your leadership, I have great reverence for you, because when I see how the city of Chicago loves you, specifically the South Side where we at right now, and in dealing with race, even like obviously I openly apologized to the Jewish community, which isn't a race. It's it's a people, it's a religion, it's a culture that welcomes any race.
Right.
But another tribe of tropes that maybe from some of my past things I've said when I was speaking about specifically white supremacy, but in white supremacy, I upset a lot of white people.
Mm-hmm.
And then, currently reading a book about white fragility, and even, the idea of, when we've always said the white man,
Mm-hmm.
and even in Michael Bradley, who is a white man,
Mm-hmm.
wrote the Iceman's Inheritance, and he speaks about the origin of, the Grimaldi Negroids from
Mm-hmm.
Africa went to the Caucasus Mountains
Mm-hmm.
and
Right, right.
evolved, and everything from melanin and neuromelanin, things a lot of people don't really know that
Right.
are
No
scientific yet,
understanding of, right.
and historic. All they hear is when I say, you know, uh, white people, or not even, because I didn't say white people are
Mm-hmm.
savages, but they heard white
Right.
people
Yep.
are savages, or white people are less compassionate,
Right.
and when I didn't say that, but like you said in that clip,
Mm-hmm.
but again, as my actions, my intentions weren't to hurt anyone, so I apologize that I hurt
Mm-hmm.
white people. But then in that conversation, as a white man,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it's talking to you, um, is there a nuance, or is there a way, like you said, if we're listening to one another? Our community was speaking from, or I was speaking from, a place of pain to empowerment.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm saying this is what our world has become. This is where we are. So how do we empower ourselves? But through that, a lot of people were even hurt. And then when you hurt the masses or the majority,
Mm-hmm.
it becomes, it's like,
Yeah.
I have no problem apologizing to white people, like that. But is there, if we're going through the process of atonement, are we having that open dialogue of, all right, well, where's their apology? Where is their, what is that?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think what you have is so important, because I think there's this other part of it saying that when you say something about white people or supremacy or entitlement, that when do white people become honest enough to acknowledge the sin
Mm.
and the supremacy and the entitlement of what's been done in this country? That when do white people become free enough to say, you know what, one of the things that anger me most, white people say, well, that's my ancestors. Don't blame me for what they did, but you benefit from the inheritance of what they did,
Mm.
and you continue it.
Right.
You're more careful how bold it looks,
Yeah.
but the same thing happens.
This
And we can look
country,
at any
capitalism, all of that is built
Oh,
off of white
capitalism, go to
supremacy.
boardrooms, go to
Yeah.
trustees, go to all around this country, and the reality still exists. So not only you benefited from it, but you continue to affirm it and continue to feed it so that it continues 70, 80, and 100 years later. But my point is, when I talk, last Sunday I mentioned in my sermon about the removing of statues and the Confederate flag. And I said, this is nice and this is cute. I said, but it's surface.
Mm.
As long as the Confederate spirit still flows in the bloodstream of America, the flag is symbolic. So we can remove the symbols, but if the truth is still in the DNA of America, we've done nothing.
Wow.
And I said, if we want to remove a statue, perhaps we should remove the Statue of Liberty.
Ooh.
Because what it says it stands for, it does not stand for. While we have people living in masses of poverty, while we have communities that look like third world countries, while we put families and children in cages, that statue is a lie. Let's remove that, because we really are not
'Cause
that.
there's no there's
I
no
got
liberty. There's
I
no
got this
liberation.
barrage of internet stuff, because I have all these trolls that go after me on the internet and want to listen every Sunday. How dare you speak about this monument of our country? Okay, hold up. You love the statue. I love what the statue is supposed to stand for. And so it doesn't stand for that. And I say that to say that unfortunately, if you raise a question on white supremacy, that's a truth. That's a reality that one can be documented with facts and data.
Right.
So you should not have to apologize for white people if you were offended by that, if white people are not honest enough to say, wow, there's truth in that.
Right. And that's the thing. This is, and you touch on so many things. And because I definitely want to touch on the symbolism, but I would almost say and ask you, like, did I make a mistake in even referencing and in dialogue and conversation by overgeneralizing, because I felt like I was talking about so many things, and that's what we do when we get in,
Yeah.
and when we converse. But I almost often want to say, you know, none of us are monolithic or homogeneous.
Right.
No, it's almost about identity and identification in that moment, because to I'm guarantee you there's some Caucasian blood flowing through my body, and I'm guarantee you some African blood flowing through your body,
Yeah.
just based off of. But what we choose to identify as,
Right.
and obviously from my skin color, I'm saying I'm a black man, I'm an
Right.
African American, you're a white man. But when we identify, especially in this day and age, this generation, you get to identify whatever you wish to.
Right.
I was speaking of history and those things, but for some reason, people chose to identify that I was talking about all white people, or even current white people in
Right.
this day. When I'm talking about, no, I'm talking about times of, when if you come from a area that you getting all the vitamin D and plants are growing and off the fat of
Yeah.
the land, opposed to an area of where there is none, and
Right,
the
right,
sun
right.
doesn't shine.
Exactly.
And you have to, then go out and conquer and do things, and creates a temperament and an aggression during those times. But for whatever reason, it looked like I was saying white people are less compassionate. White people are, and they came at me, and I felt guilty, because I was like, that I wasn't trying to say that. I was speaking of the manner of how we can empower each other, because throughout history,
Exactly.
the people that I identify with have come from a place of love and compassion, where there has been oppositions that the people that I identify with had to go against people that I don't identify with.
Exactly.
Eh,
And see, I think that's the challenge is that you're trying to speak from a history that has continued to pass on from generation to generation, that has created the atmosphere and the climate we have and the reality in America today.
Right.
And so people who don't want to understand that or hear that or even face that and acknowledge that want to just say, no, you're hurting me out here. Your heart, because I know you, is to say, I'm not here to hurt anybody, because that's not, you're a person of love. And so you're okay, if you were hurt by that, I apologize. But I can't apologize for the truth of that.
Right.
I apologize if you feel hurt, but I can't apologize for the fact that what you were hurt about is what hurt me.
Right.
And until we get to the bottom of that hurt, neither of us can be free.
What you were hurt about hurt me. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what I was gonna say, because I have no problem. I'm going through the process of atonement right now, and I apologize to the white community. I have no problem doing that. But if we're talking about hurt and pain, let's talk about where that hurt
Where
and
it
pain
came from. Let's
originated.
get to the roots of that.
Yeah, because there's a reason why you're hurt by my words.
Yeah, yeah.
And
And sometimes that reason is because you're touching on something I don't want to deal with. I don't want to face. So you're causing me to.
that's where that fragility conversation
Yeah,
comes into play.
exactly. Because you're speaking to something that.
But why you don't have that? What is it like? How did you get over? Like, I've never seen you have to deal with the, like, one, you're so loved and embraced by,
But I think what it is first of all, my faith that the Jesus I love and believe in doesn't allow you to get caught up with that.
Right.
And the King who mentored me to what it means like to be a minister or pastor, what a church ought to look like, never allowed himself to be caught up with that. And I mentioned a while ago when, they came to one time and said, Dr. King, Stokely called you this and Malcolm called you this, and they called you Uncle
All the
Tom.
radicals called you these
all the radicals
names.
called you this. What do you think about that? They're my brothers. And they didn't know what to do with that.
Right.
So they had to go to the next question.
He's like, I know
because
if you
handle anything.
what you were expecting me to say.
Yeah.
But those are my brothers.
Yeah, they can't handle, truth.
compassion
And
and-
compassion and love. They can't handle somebody being bigger than that. And what
They can't
you-
handle someone atoning, saying
Yeah.
I was wrong.
And see, the problem is that you're bigger than that, and people have a difficulty with that. They have a difficulty with you saying, I can deal with this truth and this reality and this historical fact that continues to live itself out today. And you've done all this as a white community, but I still
I
love
still
you,
love you.
and I care about you.
I
And
love my
because
white brothers and sisters.
and because I love and care about you, I want us to open up this wound and
Yeah.
heal.
Yeah.
Our problem, somebody's saying that we need to, and all that's going on from the George Floyd thing to police brutality around this country and all the rest is saying, I hear so many people saying, we just got to heal, we just got to heal. But you can't heal until you deal with the cancer.
Can't heal until you deal.
And we just want to Band-Aid it and want everything to look pretty again.
Yeah.
No.
Got to dig the cancer out and get rid of it.
We have an opportunity right now for America to say, you have lived in this racial DNA that flows in your bloodstream for centuries. And here's an opportunity to get a transfusion. Are you going to do it? Or do you want to say, okay, let's go on. Let's move forward.
Right.
And, I would have loved, and I said this in this church many times ever since the George Floyd thing, Breonna Taylor, Laquan McDonald here, all that saying, I would have loved for police officers to march and said, we want to get rid of racism in the police department. We want to face the racial tones that exist day in and day out. We want to find a way to two different ways people are handled on the street. That would have been so powerful to me. It's great that we're out here. I mean, I'm marching, Black Lives Matter marching, out in the streets doing all this, but I wanted because police officers came to me and said, man, you don't know what I go through as a black cop every day.
Right.
But I wanted white and black and brown police officers to come out and say, yeah, let's use this opportunity to get the truth about what we do to, we grab to. It's now this Blue Lives Matter,
Right.
And when I hear people talk about,
All
it's
lives
not
matter.
Black Lives Matter, it's all lives matter. You know what is amazing to me? When I go out, to vacation in the West Coast, and it's so funny to me, there's Save the Whales.
Yeah, I say the same
Okay,
thing.
but when we say Save the Whales, we're not saying kill all the other fish.
Exactly. I said that in one of my stand-up
Did you?
specials. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean,
it's like we just saying the
they
whales
are-
are endangered.
They're endangered, and that's all we're saying right
Just
now.
like the black men in this
community are endangered species.
Yes,
You know,
indeed.
when I joke with the brothers the other. I said, you see a black man walk down the street, you need to stand and applaud them.
Yes.
They should get hazard pay.
Come on, somebody.
But that's the reality.
No,
But
indeed.
but see, we jump to put up our guards, our defenses, and we've got to get free enough to say, damn, we've white people have done some horrible stuff.
Right.
And we want to get this transfusion. We want to be healed. Even the scriptures say, God will heal the land after we repent. You can't come to healing or forgiveness without coming to truth and repentance.
That's atonement, truth and reconciliation. That's what it's all
Until
about.
you do that, why did South Africa say we got to have truth and reconciliation?
Yeah.
And it pains me that not just as a country, but as individuals, we're so unwilling to do that. And when you are trying to be transparent in that, I mean, I remember when I was going to a thing with basketball league, and we were the only black team in it, and they weren't going to play at our gym. We had only played their gym. I said, we're not in it. Unless you play at our gym too, we're not going to be a part of it. And there's too much racism in this. The people jumped on me. And I had white people that came to me and said, you're absolutely right. I agree with you. But if I stood up and said it, my brothers and sisters would come after me. And so I can't do it because I got to live in that neighborhood. Well, when do we get to the point of saying truth is and is more important than comfort? One of the things we learned about King, we learned about John Lewis recently in a whole new way, and that we're afraid of today is being willing to sacrifice for what we believe. if you're not willing, I remember one time we were integrating schools, and we were lining up, getting ready in the bus, and his brother comes up and he says, to all of us standing in line, getting ready in the bus, he said, if you're not willing to die today, don't get on the bus. Now, my first thing was, is there another bus? I'm going to be real honest. I was young.
Yeah.
I wanted to live.
Yeah, as you should.
But I had to just reconcile do I believe this is enough to pay the cost? You know, am I willing to pay the cost for this? If not, then I don't believe in it.
Right.
And we're not a people today that are willing to go through the sacrifice for truth.
Wow. Well, speaking of sacrifices and truth, can we talk Jesus for a moment?
Yes, sir. We can do that.
Only, and I say that because we were talking symbols and statues, and as we speak, there's a beautiful symbol and portrait of a black Jesus.
Yes, sir.
With his hands wide open, right here in the heart of Chicago, in a Catholic church. I don't know if I would say that in itself. I remember when I first saw that, I was amazed because I've been to many Catholic churches. I don't think I've ever seen,
Unfortunately,
a black Jesus. And you talked about, getting rid of symbols and statues, and a hot button topic as of recently that got myself in trouble, and many others, is when we speak about Jesus' origin. And even, when we open this book up as somebody who's a hopeful theologian, I've studied it thoroughly. I've studied, currently studying the Torah and the Talmud. I've studied the Quran, and knowing that any Abrahamic faith, that we all subscribe to it at times, when we talk about the origins of Africa. But then when we get into that space, and we know the history, if we're just talking theology, in the 1300s and where Roman Catholicism reigned, and Constantine was someone who said, you know what, I need to rule my people. I need to, create a good book that, had some strong principles that everyone can learn from. And he put the Bible as we know it today together from many stories, from many walks of life, from many wise and powerful men and their stories. And we get to that space where we talk Christianity and the anointing of our Savior.
Right.
It's been something that has divided us. As you know, Dr. King says the most segregated time.
11 o'clock Sunday morning.
11 o'clock Sunday morning. And for you to be someone as a white man, to stand here every Sunday morning and to have a black Jesus behind you, tell me about that.
Well, first of all, I remember when we first put two experiences I'll never forget when we first put that mural up in 1984. I had a couple of black pastors call me because they did a big thing in the press in Chicago when we unveiled it. And they said, what you trying to do? I said, what do you want to try to do? We just wanted to put up, first of all, the scriptures say that everybody should be able to see themselves in God. And so in the African American community, be able to see themselves in it. I said, second of all, it's a look in the book of Revelations, and he's described as someone with bronze skin.
Brown skin and a hair of wool.
Hair of wool. Now, as far as I know, nobody has a Polaroid of Jesus.
Right.
So nobody really knows, but the description that the scriptures give me looks more like this.
Right.
But unfortunately, that Christianity was used to empower supremacy and to enslave people. The slave ships had crosses hanging on them, had church, and we're singing Amazing Grace. You look at slavery in this country. Lynching would often take place in the public square after they left church on Sunday morning.
Wow.
All in their church clothes, standing around, watching somebody lynched for a public display of this is what happens to you if you come against us.
Wow.
I always say that the Bible And I think today also the Quran and the Torah have been hijacked and used for hate, used for empowerment of one's particular agenda. I think Jesus has been hijacked. And unfortunately, what society and what people in power try to do is to theologize to back up. You know, Pharaoh always had his religious leaders to theologize what he was
Justify.
doing and justify it and spiritualize it, and that's been done through history. And that's one of the things that I said from the moment I came here in 1975 is, we're going to get back to this. I don't care what you've been taught in church, whether you came from another Catholic church, a Baptist church, Church of God in Christ, Pentecostal, whatever. We're going to go back to this and try to get to the truth. And that's what we're going to try to live, because this tells us we're supposed to live like Jesus,
Right.
not like Catholics or Baptists or Pentecostals.
Or
We're
any
supposed to live like
denomination.
Jesus.
Right.
You know, religion has so hijacked, and I think that's why a lot of men don't come to church. A lot of men don't come to church because he's been hijacked. Look at this weak person. When the Jesus of the scriptures
He's a radical
is
man.
this radical, strong brother
Come on.
who spoke truth, who talked about straightening crooked and smoothing the rough and filling the mountains.
Speaking to the religious
Yeah.
leaders. Speaking to
And
the church.
the harshest words he ever used was to the religious community. Vipers and hypocrites, he called them. So, I mean, let's get back to the real Jesus and not the one that we have portrayed.
Right.
It's just like we try to do with King today.
Right.
You know, we love people when they're dead
Right.
because we want to then redefine them.
Right.
You know, so we forget the radical king.
Radical king.
We forget the letter
67.
to in the Birmingham jail.
Yeah.
You know, we forget about the strong, powerful things he said, and we want him to be somebody that we can be comfortable with.
Yeah.
Truth does not make you comfortable. Truth makes you better.
Yeah. Brother Cornel West wrote The Radical King,
Yep.
he was speaking of those times where King wasn't liked, wasn't loved,
Yeah.
dealing with some of the things that we deal with, where
Right.
you feel ostracized by all the communities
Oh.
because you feel one side thinks you're too soft and one side thinks you're
Yeah.
too radical.
Yeah.
But when we're speaking of Christ and being Christ-like, in that walk and in your faith walk, when race gets infused into that, and it like you said, that I feel like that's where that hijack process becomes, because you make a great point. You are supposed to identify yourself in God, and see when even in the Buddhist community, when you see the Buddha in India looks like people
Right.
from India.
Right.
The Buddha in Asia looks like people from the Buddha in China. That they
Yeah.
look. So I don't have a problem with you. It goes that question: did God make us in His image, or did we make Him in our image?
Yeah.
But
Exactly.
if we're going back to that identification process again and saying, I see myself in God. Why, and again, another thing that got me in trouble is when I'm talking about this word and the
Right.
Hebrew people and where they come from, and where we're talking about the bloodline
Yep.
of Noah to Shem and
Yep.
Ham and Japhet, and to the Abraham and the Edomites with Esau, like all
Yeah.
of those things. If you break it down in the origins of these places, it's still they're I think people have an issue saying that we all originated from the same place, and that same place happens to be Africa. And
Not have an issue, absolutely condemn it and ignore it.
right,
Will not acknowledge it.
why? What is that as a white man who understands this and knows this? Why do people have issues with their origin?
Because I think in the white community from day one, at least in my lifetime, everything originated from the white community. You were affirmed that, you were taught that, you were not, somebody asked me, when you were growing up, the white people, were they told that they were superior? No, we weren't told that. It was just a norm.
That's
It
what
was
it was.
just an accepted reality.
Yeah.
So you were
You didn't have
just
to become a white millionaire. You just became a millionaire.
yeah, exactly, exactly.
Right.
Right. And
We
and
black millionaires. You can't just
exactly.
be
Yeah.
millionaire.
Yeah, just a millionaire here.
Yeah.
Um, but there was these subtle and not so subtle overtones that were told all the time that you were better than, and that you deserved this and you deserved that, and that was infiltrated in your thinking, in your very core, and in your very character, and you had to come against that at some point. And what gave me the strength to come against that was this: we
Right.
talk we're in the made image and likeness of God. It's not about His skin; it's about His character.
Right.
And we don't want to come to the image and likeness of the character of God or of Allah. We want to, so we put in all the churches, white images of Jesus. So we reaffirm if He's the Savior. And what does He look like? A white man. I mean, this was not by accident.
Right.
This is by control.
Right.
Christianity knew exactly what it was doing. And so it continued to portray that. And then in America, we look at our country, this great country that we talk about is this wonderful, wonderful place. We're born and birthed in genocide, built in slavery, and committed to supremacy.
Wow.
That's our DNA.
Wow.
So, I say all the time, how dare we say, God bless America? And how dare we ever say America is a Christian country? America is not a Christian country. But when we do that, now we're defining Christianity. So the way America operates in supremacy, in entitlement, in racism, in haves and haves not, and the gaps between the poor and the rich, this is Christian.
Right.
So we're doing today in the same thing was done in the slave ships.
Right.
We're more subtle at it.
So how do you deal with that negativity of not just Christianity or the things that you speak of, what the bad name that we've strayed away from the book for so much, and because of the denomination specifically, and the Catholic faith in the world of Catholicism, which is from the Catholic priests who get a bad rap to just like you said, just religion in general, especially in today's day and age where people are mad at the church, and even when you think of the origins of the church, a lot of reason why the black community has strayed away, because we do see the control, we do see the supremacy, we do go into places and see a white Jesus, and I don't see God in me,
and
how
the
can I
hypocrisy of it.
Right. So how do you deal with that as a man of the cloth, as a Catholic priest?
Well, I mean, I try to do it by being as truthful as I can and acknowledge all the hypocrisy in the Catholic Church and its roots and how it was lived out, but also go back and say, here's when I saw Catholicism, and I look back at the Civil Rights Movement, or the movement for peace, where you have the Barracan brothers, or you had Dick Morris role with the Catholic priest shot in Selma.
Right.
And when you go back and look at when you saw what Dr. King put together in the struggle for justice was Jews and Christians, Catholics, who were built on a cause, but they were a minority. And they were ostracized.
Right.
I've been ostracized because of the things I say. I'm going to acknowledge the sinfulness of the Catholic Church, and of Islam, and of Judaism. I'm going to acknowledge that. And I believe all the major faiths suffer from what a lot of people suffer from in America: stolen identity, and their identity has been stolen. Until we get back to what the Bible and what the Torah, what the Quran really teach. That's when people say, how can you work with a Farrakhan? How come you can work with this person or that person? Because in all the holy books, there is a similar thread of love, of justice, and of caring for one another.
Compassion.
Exactly. And that's not, but if we would just center on that,
Right.
which is the foundation of every one of the holy books,
Yeah.
imagine what we could do as a country, as a nation, as a world. But so I think it's acknowledging the sin, the fault, the failure, the hypocrisy, and then saying, now how do we how do we live faithful to this Jesus, not to Catholicism, not to Protestantism? How do we live faithful to the Christ we say that we love
Right.
and that we want to follow? Well, you can't say you're following Jesus if you're over here following religion.
Right.
So religion either has to come back or die.
Mm.
But I think we've been so concerned about getting into our rituals and our dogma, and we lost our identity. And until we get back to that, and that's why I say all the time, Nick, when they talk about America and the condition we're in right now, we say two things. They would say, well, Trump, he's made this racist society that we are. No, Trump didn't make this.
He definitely
Trump
didn't make it.
He's fueling it. He's feeding it.
He's
He's saying, I'm going to be your spokesperson.
he's what do they say? He's not the president. He's a motivational speaker for racists.
Yeah, and he is. But what he's also done is expose for us the real America
Yeah.
that we want to pretend doesn't exist. That hateful, racist,
That bully
supremacist,
mentality.
bully mentality.
We're better. We're greater than everyone.
Absolutely. And we do it to people of color here, and we do it to the whole rest of the world. Because everybody is second to America. America has taken its supremacy and given it to the whole world. Saying, we're better than all the rest of you are.
Exceptionalism is what they're calling it. The
Yeah.
imperialistic approach.
Absolutely. So we have to confront that when it's done by the country and when it's done by religion. And we've got to be honest enough to say this, that we messed up.
Yeah.
We've lost our identity, and how do we get back to it?
You bring up a great point to saying being honest and admitting that we've messed up. Through my process, and you kind of watched it closely and you kind of mentored me and counseled me through a lot of this. What did I do wrong?
I don't think you did anything. I think what you did was you spoke, again, your heart and your truth. And people jumped to a phrase or this what I call this crazy defensiveness. So okay, I say I love Nick Cannon. If Nick Cannon says, it's midnight right now and I know it's the morning right now,
Right.
then I'd say, you're an idiot.
Right.
You're crazy. You're delusional.
Right.
No, I can disagree to say, no, Nick, it's morning right now. It's not midnight.
Right.
But I don't condemn you because I didn't like some way you phrased things or something, or because you hit a button on me that I respond to all the time.
Right.
So, and then when you try to say, well, I apologize if I hurt people, because that's your heart.
Yeah.
And then some other folks say, what are you apologizing for?
Yeah.
Again, you don't understand Nick Cannon.
Right.
He doesn't ever want to hurt people. He just wants to be truthful and honest with people and speak his truth.
Right.
And so now you got all these different,
Groups
and stakes in the ground to protect their ground
Right.
rather than to protect truth.
Mm.
And we've got to get away from protecting ground. I'm not here to protect Catholicism. I'm not here to protect white people. I'm not even here to protect black people.
Right.
I'm here to protect truth.
Mm.
And what truth hits, then you got to deal with the truth. Now, if you say, is there something I'm saying that's not truthful? Come with me with that. But don't say because you're hurt by the way what I said. No, let's talk about what I said.
Mm.
So I don't think you did anything wrong. I think but unfortunately, you're a person of love and truth in a society that doesn't like either.
Right. Mm.
We don't want to deal with truth. And we don't want to wrap it in love.
Wow.
And unfortunately, when you wrap truth in love today, you're dangerous. You're dangerous to the status quo, and you're dangerous to the lie that perpetuates. And you're danger to those who stick in their ground and put their flag in the ground. This is where I stand. You're a dangerous person to them because now you're confronting them to step out of their comfortable secure, um, protected,
Right.
realities, and
Yeah.
say, "Wow, you made me think about something."
Yeah.
Or maybe, if there's folks that say, "You shouldn't apologize," say, "Well, maybe I could look deeper than what he said to say, wow, how do we still love people?"
Yeah.
And say, I don't want to hurt anybody,
That's the
but
true
I just
compassion.
want to,
That's what I have no problem saying I apologize. I have no problem saying
yeah.
I'm sorry, especially if I hurt you. I tell the story about with my children. I
Hmm.
say, with my kids, they like to throw rocks, and they outside throwing rocks, you
Yeah.
know, and another kid gets hit by the rock. You don't first say, "Oh, I didn't mean to hit you with
Right.
that rock." No, the first thing you say is, "I
I'm sorry.
apologize."
Yeah.
And then we deal with why were we throwing rocks in the
Right.
first place. We could have been
Yeah.
doing anything else to
Yeah.
have fun.
Yeah.
We could have
Yeah.
been throwing the ball. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
the first thing to get through is to say I hurt you, and
Yeah.
I apologize. And
Yeah.
so even in that process, I kind of go in and I kind of simplify it in that manner. It was like we're adults. When does the name calling stop? When does it? You're this and they're this and you're like you said you're an idiot. You're this and
Yeah.
how you're a racist. You're an anti-Semitic. Like it's like yo, can we just stop calling names and deal with
Yeah.
the truth and the love of the matter?
We got to stop name calling. And I keep saying we
It
got to.
sounds like we're in elementary school.
Yeah.
Stop name calling.
Yeah. But that's what we need to go back to.
Right.
We need to go back to saying, share that toy.
Yeah.
We need to go back to saying, no, just say you can play with it now. You can. We go back to saying, now shake hands and hug,
Right.
We need to go back to basic things. But not only do we need to stop all the name calling and the stereotyping and the hatefulness, but we got to also go to the freeness to say, wow, let me look at what you said. Wow. Then maybe, I can see how you believed that, how you felt that. I can see how you were hurt. I can see, wow, there was some wrong done there. If I can't be free enough to be able to say the Catholic Church is racist and pushed racism, theologized injustice and racism, if I can't be free enough to say that, I'm a bad Catholic.
Mm.
If I can't be free enough as a white person to say white people have held their control, their supremacy, their power from the time of slavery through Jim Crow through 2020.
Yeah.
If I can't be free enough to say that, now, what amazes me is there's very few people that'll hate you for knowing you. They'll hate you for what they want to know you to be and what they
Yeah.
want to define you.
They say it's hard to hate somebody up close.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we also have a society that puts people in stereotypes. So, Farrakhan is this, Cannon's this, Pfleger's this is this, this. Take away that. Do you know this person? Have you? I remember sometimes when we talk about, you can't Farrakhan at your church, and he's just a hater. I said, have you ever listened to an entire speech by Farrakhan? No. But how do you say that? Because somebody told you to say that. And I believe we are never, ever, ever going to create the ability for the Jewish community in Farrakhan or the black community and the white community or police and citizens to ever come together and, as we talk about, or heal until we deal with, well, where did all this come from? What has been done?
Yeah.
What has been said? What is the reality? What's the truth? And then we each pick up and learn and grow from that. We do not want to learn. We don't want to grow. We don't want to be better. We want to be stuck in our holes of insecurity and arrogance.
And from that breeds things like institutionalized racism and
Absolutely.
infrastructures. And you talk about knowing one another and knowing thyself. I would say, I know you. I know your heart, your compassion. I've marched these streets with you. Saying stop the killing, stop the violence. You've personally adopted, young men and watched them grow and save their lives and even within this community. I mean, some even sitting here kind of, I have great memories, but I even one that kind of pains my heart is seeing right here where we sit a 9-year-old casket, I was sitting right there, and it's just tears everywhere, and it's ideas of a community like this, the South Side of Chicago, where the media likes to call the center of black on black violence. And
Right.
they always like to point to
Yeah.
what's going on in Chicago. As a man who's walked these streets for years and emphasized love and compassion and trying to save this community, how do we truly do it? Can we save this community with everything that we just talked about of what America represents, and then all the pointing of the fingers, but they don't understand that institutionalized racism is what caused the reason what's going on in Chicago? And do they even really care? We did a movie together with Spike Lee that showed that they don't the corporate infrastructures and capitalism don't really care about what they can't wait till they can gentrify these areas.
Exactly. They don't. And it's so makes me so angry and outraged because we want to talk about all the killing of the New Numbers New Weekend, and it's horrific and it's terrible and
you're fighting that fight on the front line,
right? And they bring in the National Guard, bring all this stuff, and people wonder why I keep fighting against bringing the National Guard or Trump sending in troops and all that, because that's the Band-Aid, and I'm tired of Band-Aids. We never have the courage. America can solve this. It can solve the violence. It doesn't have the will to solve. It doesn't care. Because we want to get to the root, just like going back to the cancer of racism. The roots of it is that you look at the 16, 17 communities in Chicago where the most violence takes place. You see the same exact scenario and definition. Double-digit unemployment, lack of economic development, lack of housing, lack of opportunity, lack of investment, most coming back from incarceration with nothing and no chances, underfunded, underperforming schools, high poverty rates. When you put all these realities, if you took those realities and went to the North Shore and did that for the next 15 years, you'd see the same thing going on there as you do here.
Right.
So we created this condition. I say all the time that the government, both local and national, are the co-conspirators of the violence. They're the hidden hand. They've created it. Now they sit back and condemn it.
Right.
And say, do you want to solve it?
Right. It's like, how did the guns get to Chicago?
Yeah.
How did
who's making and selling these guns?
Yeah.
Who's making and selling these drugs? Not black folks.
Right.
These are all coming. Nick, twice in the last year, I got calls. I went over. I saw for myself. Twice in the last year, where two white guys came in an SUV, dropped a Nike bag full of guns, said, "Here, defend yourselves."
Wow. You saw it.
I saw the bags.
Wow.
Where are guns coming from? It's amazing to me. We right now they can tell you what's going on in Mars.
Yeah.
But they can't tell you
how
the guns are getting in here.
To the south side
it's
of
amazing
Chicago.
to me. Well, we must really be incompetent in this country.
Right.
But we don't care. Because why? Because as long as this continues, now everybody's talked about in the last couple of years, 350,000 black folks moved out of Chicago. You think they're upset about that? Not at all.
Not at all.
Because now we can look at these communities. A lot of people that ran to the suburbs saying we don't like the taxes out there.
Yeah.
We want to come back to the city.
Gentrification.
So we can gentrify. And the other thing I always hear is, we don't have the money. We don't have the money to do it. I remember Dr. King said, the Voting Rights Act, desegregation, that didn't cost America nothing.
Right.
To economically create an equal playing field will cost America trillions.
Yes.
And they don't want to do that.
They don't.
And they still don't want to do that. But they do it where they want to. On the west side of Chicago, Madison Street, in 1974, I ran a soup kitchen there. It was called Skid Row. They redeveloped that. I can't afford restaurants on the west side of Chicago. West Loop,
Right.
high rises, $1 million. Same thing with South Loop. They change what they want to change. They
For
just decided,
for
I don't
their
want to
benefit.
change this. So guess what? If the violence continues, people are moving out.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the people that remain are the only people that don't have the money to move out.
Right.
So you create this now
And wait for them to
poverty,
die off or
right?
kill each other
And
off.
wait till they kill off or die off, and then you come in and create it for who you want to create it for.
We touched on that in the film that you and
Yeah.
I were a part of, directed by the
Yeah.
great Spike Lee,
The great
called
Spike.
Chirac. A lot of people, it was a polarizing film for many
Absolutely.
reasons. And I think,
Yeah.
that's Spike's genius.
That's
He
genius.
does that on
Oh.
purpose, you know what I mean? To take a Lysistrata,
Yeah, yeah.
2,000-year-old sonic musical and put it in the heart of the South Side of Chicago. And the great John Cusack played you pretty much in the
Yeah.
film, and he was up here doing his best impression of you on a Sunday morning. He did a phenomenal job in the film, but that's where I was first introduced to you and had the opportunity to research and understand all that you've done in your life. But what would you say? There's been films made about you. There's so many reports, and you can go online and Google you and see so many outstanding things. What would you say is your greatest accomplishment?
I don't know if it's my greatest accomplishment, but I think what's been most important to me is that I've tried to make, whether it's a brother on the street, an elder on a porch, or a lawyer in the church, to say that every life is valuable, every life has potential,
Because you've saved many lives.
every life has possibility, and show respect and honor and reverence for that life.
Right.
I've tried to show that here, so that in this church on a Sunday morning, there's homeless people, and there's degreed people. There's brothers from a gang, a woman who may be prostituting, but to understand and hear they're all reverenced and welcomed, and that no one is better or worse than the other. So I've tried to I think if there's anything I've tried most to try to do is get back to who he is,
Right.
and teach that, and not, let's take off the bondage of religion and try to find, I always say our whole mission of life is trying to find who this Jesus was,
Right.
so I can be like him. And unfortunately, it's sad that that's a controversial desire in this society
Your
today.
Christ-like walk is a great accomplishment.
Yeah,
but
it's
it can be controversial.
yeah,
many.
isn't that sad?
Yeah.
A lot of people throw his name around, but nobody wants to throw his character around. They like him from a distance.
Right. And as we conclude, I would say, I've seen you deliver amazing sermons that inspire. I've seen you walk the streets. I've seen you, help people, and really truly been a light in the community and a beacon of hope. In 2020 and all that we're going through and everything that's going on in this world, from pandemics to civil unrest to hurricanes to
Everything, fires.
Yeah, as they say, I'm just waiting for the locusts to show up.
Frogs are on their way.
Yeah. But in all seriousness, the things that we can control as humans, because the rest of the world is operating. I don't see the animals picketing. I don't see them protesting. I don't see them putting on masks. They're living their lives.
Yeah.
For us as humans, what's the solution? What is the solution from the things that you deal with daily? With I've watched you change gang members into faithful men of the club. I've watched what goes on in this community, and seen the despair, seen the hope. But then in the world of 2020, is there a solution? Or when people go, Father, help me. What's the solution?
Well, I guess my response to that would be that, first of all, I kind of enjoyed the fact that all the mosques, the synagogues, and the churches were closed.
Mm.
So now let's see what you really believe on the street.
Mm.
I said the church didn't close, the building closed, the church left the building. So here's an opportunity for us to be Muslim, Christians, and Jews in our daily lives to see, is this all fraud and phony, or is it really what we believe? If so, how do we live on the street? But I think with all that's going on with pandemic, with civil unrest, with the new exposure of inequalities in communities where the virus hit more in black and brown because of the lack of health care and health resources and the rest and healthy food, and the police brutality and all that's the racism exposure of all that's going on, I just think it's a chance right now to try and get it right.
Hit reset.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Hit the reset button. Let's start over. Do we have the courage to start over and seek to do it right? We're going to fumble, we're going to fall, we're going to make mistakes. Hell yeah. But do we have the courage to say, let's join arms, let's join hands, let's join hearts and say, Muslims, Christians, Jews, black, white, rich, poor, gay, straight, let's join arms and say, let's try to do it right. We may never get the opportunity for the reset button again that we have right now. When people say, I can't wait to get back to normal. No.
It's a new normal.
Normal was bad.
Yeah.
I said last Sunday, Nick, I said, if people are saying we got to create a normal, I don't want normal.
Yeah.
I don't want to ever be normal again.
Mm.
I want us to be evolving consistently. And yes, we want to change the narrative of who America is and what the world ought to look like. But while we're trying to do this, each of us can try to be the best human I can be right now.
Right.
To be honest to me, to my truth, to be courageous enough to speak what I believe, to do what you've done. I mean, as I've watched you over the years and see you always willing to be courageous enough to put in your language and in your art the issues and allow your art form to help challenge people to grow. Now, it's their choice to grow or not. But you did your job to say, I'm putting it out there.
Right.
And I think we have to make a choice now for our country, obviously, and for the world. It starts right here in your own truth. So when you look in the mirror, are you happy at who you are? How can you grow? How can you evolve? How can you be better coming out of this? And how when we are told we can take the mask off, we're really taking the mask off of supremacy, of bigotry, of hatred, of division. And how do we become humans to each other again and realize that we're all, like Dr. King said, brothers and sisters, connected, in need of, we're either going to grow together, sisters, brothers, or perish as fools.
Fools. Yeah, man.
Community or chaos.
Right.
How do we build the beloved community?
Right. Man, well, Father Pfleger, I thank you. I thank you for your counsel. I thank you for your time. I thank you for your leadership. I mean, if people don't tell you thank you enough, man, they really should, because you exemplify everything that you talk about. You exemplify that example. And even taking the time to, even off camera to counsel me and to help, because you've been on many sides of it. They've come at you and
Yes, Lord.
And you've steadfast, stood firm.
But I thank you, man. I just need to tell you again how much I love and respect I have for you and for your voice. You are a needed and necessary voice. You're a necessary witness right now in this opportunity before us. Continue to speak your truth. And, let the chips fall where they fall.
Right.
At the end of the day, man, I tell people all the time, there's two times in my day which is my most important. In the morning, and in my prayer time, I tell God, help me to be the best I can be today, you know, and tell me, guide me, give me wisdom, put the words in my mouth, you know, help order my steps. And at the end of the day, when I have to brush my teeth, wash my hair, and look in that mirror, say, do you think God is proud of who you are today? And then repent for the things, man, I could have done that better. I should have done that better. At the end of the day, Nick Cannon, the only thing that matters is what God thinks of you. There's always going to be people that hate you. There's always going to be people that like you. And there's going to always be the people in between who will say Hosanna today and crucify him tomorrow. But at the end of the day, if you can stand before God and say, man, I tried my best. He's not asking for a perfect Nick Cannon or a perfect Mike Pfleger. He's just asking for Nick Cannon who's trying to be his best. And I see that in you over and over again. Keep doing that, because we need that. We need your truth and your humanity.
Thank you. Thank you, Father Mike. I needed to hear that. Definitely, man. And I love you, you know, sincerely and unconditionally, and I appreciate you so much. Now, I was saying, usually in closing, you know, we have a text and we talk about, but is there a benediction? Is there is there an altar call? But I say that jokingly, but in a way where people want to get involved or do more. Is there a way that, you know, they can support Saint Sabina, or a website? Or,
yeah, I mean, you can go to our website and find out the things we do, and www.saintsabina, spelled out SAINTSABINA.org, and see what we're about. But I just challenge everybody, wherever you're at, you know, look in your community, your neighborhood, for somebody or something that you think is doing good. Join them. You know, Vernon Johns, who was the pastor at Dexter Avenue before King, said, "You see a good fight, join it.
Jump in."
That's right. And do that. We all got to do that. There is no conscientious objectors in this war for justice.
Wow.
Everybody got to get in it. Everybody got to fight.
Powerful words. Thank you, Pastor.
Thank you. I love you, brother.
I love you too,
man.
I love you so much, man. And there you have it. We got to do this again. You got to come back on Cannon's class and teach us some more. We need that wisdom.
Thank you for the invitation.
All right.